Hey everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the chat with yours truly. Welcome, and happy March. Apparently, March decided to come in like a lion with storms. We got a couple of storms here in New York, so I hope that you guys have stayed warm and dry and is in a good place right now. Thank you again for joining me. I certainly appreciate your support. With the passing of Luke Perry, our topic tonight will be on stroke. Now, because when a high profile person passes away of an illness or some sort of disease, we tend to become oversaturated in terms of the news with what happened, how could this have happened, he or she was so young, and everyone starts to tell the what ifs, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, and so we find ourselves in this place where we're hearing so much information about this one topic. So I contacted one of my doctors, my neurologist, and asked, if he wanted to do the podcast with me just to talk about this topic, because unfortunately I do have quite an extensive experience with strokes. I've had one major stroke, and I've had TIAs, minor strokes and so forth over the years. But what he told me was, which I thought was really sweet and funny, he said, listen, I would love to do it with you, but I think it would be better if you did it on your own, given that you have so much experience. As a matter of fact, he said he would love to listen to it afterwards. So hopefully, fingers crossed, God willing, today's episode will be a wonderful episode, and I will make my doctor very, very proud. Wish me luck, guys. But like I said before, our topic tonight is stroke. And the first thing is, what is a stroke? The simplest way to put it is that a stroke is a brain attack. First and foremost, it can happen to anyone and at any time, at any age. And this occurs when the blood flow to an area of your brain is cut off. Now, if the blood flow is cut off from your brain, that means that it's depriving the brain of oxygen. What happens when the brain is deprived of oxygen? The brain cells starts to die. And literally during a stroke, your brain, in those areas that control memory and muscle control, they're dying. That's why it's so important to get to the doctor as soon as possible. How a person is affected by their stroke, it really depends on where the stroke occurred, right? In the brain, and how much the brain is damaged for certain. Someone could have a small stroke, and someone who had a small stroke may only have minor problems such as temporary weakness in the arm or leg, which I have had with minor strokes. Now, you have people who have a major stroke or a larger stroke, and they may have permanent paralysis on one side of their body. They may lose the ability to speak. Some people may recover from a major stroke, but at least I would say 2/3 of them will recover with some form of disability from that major stroke. Now, the numbers here in the United States, you have a stroke happening every 40 seconds. So since I've been speaking to you, at least 4 people have had a stroke. And stroke is now the 5th leading cause of death in the United States, which means that every 4 minutes, someone will die of a stroke in the United States of America. And 80% of that is preventable. It's actually preventable. And stroke is now the leading cause of adult disability in the United States. Those are some staggering numbers, right? Now, there are different kinds of strokes. There is the hemorrhagic stroke. That's the a brain aneurysm, if a brain aneurysm bursts, or you have a leakage from a weakened blood vessel. This is where most people have the major stroke, and they usually result in permanent disability or death. So then you have this ischemic stroke. This is the stroke where I would say this one is caused by a blood clot. The ischemic stroke is caused by a blood clot. And then you have the TIA. With the TIA, when the blood flow to a part of the brain stops for a short period of time, you're talking about minutes. It's called a TIA because it's not a major stroke and it's not an ischemic stroke, but it's a temporary blockage. And you have people that live with TIAs all the time. I have had quite a few TIAs. I now am able to recognize a TIA and, to be honest with you, which is not good, and I will never ever recommend this. I have TIA and I don't go to the hospital. That should tell you how many of them I've had, that I can spot them a mile away. I know what it feels like. I know when it's time to go to the hospital. But for me, because I've had so much, and because I now know the different signs, all of that good stuff, how my body feels, and everyone's body is different. You have to get to know your body to be able to get to that place. And I always recommend going to the hospital, calling 911 if you ever feel like you're having a stroke. Now, what most people will know is FAST, right? How to recognize the symptoms of a stroke. FAST, face, right? Ask the person to smile. Does one part of their face droop? If it does, they're having a stroke. Arms, ask the person to raise their arm. If they can't lift their arm, or if they lift their arm but it just keeps going downward, like you lift your arm up but the arm keeps drifting downward, that can also be a sign of stroke. You can ask the person to repeat a couple of phrases. If their speech is slurred or the words are coming out jumbled, that's also another symptom of a stroke. And time, the most important. If you see any of these signs, call 911 immediately. When I had the major stroke, and this was maybe about 3 years ago or so, I was home with my home health aide, and I was throwing up and not feeling well that day. And with me, whenever I've had any clots in my body, any abnormalities when I'm having, whether it be a stroke or a clot, my body always tells me ahead of time. I usually get severe vomiting or diarrhea. It's my body's way of saying something is going on with your body. And as that was happening, she's asking me what's happening. And as I'm speaking, we realize that my speech is slurred. My words are jumbled. And one side of my left side began to droop. So what did we do? We got to the ER. I would say from the time that we recognized the symptoms and, got dressed and head to the ER, I would say it's about 20 minutes between calling a cab and, do not call a cab if you are having a stroke. Call 911. I did that because I am in Mount Vernon, and at the time it was more important for me to get to Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx by 233rd and Carpenter. I thought it was more important to get there, that my chance of surviving this stroke would be better if I got to this hospital, which was my hospital where all my doctors are, versus me going to Mount Vernon Hospital, our local hospital, because I didn't think they were equipped to handle my case. Because for my case, it's not just, that I'm having a stroke. I have other complications, which from experience at Mount Vernon Hospital taught me that the doctors there were not equipped to deal with my situation. So when we realized that I was having a stroke, we literally called a cab, and the cab came within just like 3 minutes. We were outside, myself and my aide, we were outside waiting, got in the cab, told the driver, listen, get me to the emergency room ASAP. He got there within no time, thank God. And when I got to the hospital, they recognized that I was having a stroke, that when I got to the hospital, my left side was drooped, my words were still slurred and jumbled. You could physically see me having the stroke. And the first thing, once they recognized that, they gave me the drug, they gave me the clot buster drug, and some people may know it, some people may not. But this is the drug that you're going to get if you ever are suspected of having a stroke. They call it the clot buster drug, right? They call it the clot buster drug because that's literally what it does. It's called the name is hard to pronounce, so it's called the TPA drug, clot buster drug. But they have to give you that within, I would say, about 4 hours of having a stroke. So it is really important to get to the hospital in time for them to give you this medication. Now, it takes an hour for the medication to be administered. So you're talking about a time crunch. So if you don't get to the hospital in time, that time span dwindles, and the door is the time frame is really narrow for them to get that drug in you, for them to see the drug work. Now for me, I got to the hospital in time, and they gave me the TPA. Once they gave it to me, we could literally see the drug working. I mean, I was rushed up to ICU. I was in ICU for about a week, and then I was moved to the regular floor, and then I was in rehab for about a month. But I'm telling you my story to show the importance of getting to the hospital in time, and that it matters. You don't want to stay home and call this one. I think, what do we have a tendency to do? Tendency to call this one, I'm not feeling well, I'm not sure, and and as women, we tend to think that we have to take care of everyone. So we don't want to go to the emergency room knowing, oh my God, the kids are in school, I have to cook dinner, I have to do this, I have to pick up this one, I have to take care of my husband. But it is time sensitive that you get to that emergency room on time. Now, some of the additional symptoms of a stroke includes, confusion. Like if you get a sudden numbness or weakness in your face, your arm, your leg, especially on one side, that can also be a sign of stroke. Sudden confusion or understanding what someone is saying, that is also a symptom of a stroke. Trouble seeing. When I had my major stroke, I had trouble seeing. My vision was also affected. So, that was also a telltale sign, but that didn't come until I got to the hospital. Another one is trouble walking, feeling dizzy, loss of balance, or your coordination. Those are all signs of a stroke. And also, if you have a severe headache without no cause, just randomly a severe headache, like the worst headache you've ever had, that kind of headache. Now, for women, women have different symptoms. What I just told you, or the common symptoms across the board. Now, as women, our bodies are different. So our symptoms tend to be a little bit more unique than that of men. Women tend to faint. We have we may feel a general like weakness all over our body, just weakness. Short of breath, difficulty breathing. Hallucination is another one for women. Some women have said they've hallucinated when they were having a stroke. Nausea, vomiting. For me, I was nauseous and I was vomiting. Pain is another one. Seizures and like sudden hiccups. Sudden hiccups is another unique symptoms for women that we may take for granted. It for everyone's body is different, so a stroke is going to affect each person in a different way. After I had the major stroke and I went to rehab, I spent quite a bit of time in rehab. Then once I came home from rehab, because I stayed in rehab before I came home for about a month, and once I came home, rehab continued. I had occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, all of it. And they came to my home 2 to 3 times a week, and then I started doing the outpatient. But it deals with everyone differently. That's why it's very important. If you listen to my podcast about how to advocate for your health, one of the things that I kept stressing was getting to know your body, how important it is as men and women to know our body, knows how it feels. You should know if something is wrong in your body. And sometimes us women will say, something just doesn't feel right. Because we have that, God bless us with that sixth sense too, but we tend to feel when something is not right. Don't ignore those feelings, get it checked out. The next step is some of the risk factors and how we can prevent a stroke from happening. Now, we have the average, they're called lifestyle risk factors, and we can prevent a stroke from happening by our lifestyle. We're talking about, eating habits, physical activity, smoking, drinking. Those are lifestyle risk factors that we can change. These are habits or behaviors that we choose to engage in, so we can change them. And changing these habits can also decrease your risk of having a stroke. Now, when it comes to the lifestyle factors, boy, oh boy, the lifestyle factors is one thing that some people can't seem to change. They can't seem to drop those bad habits, and it has caused people to die or to be disabled. Now, those lifestyle risk factors, we're talking about smoking. Smoking increases your risk of having a stroke. So does drinking. Your lack of physical activity, right? And your eating habits, the fatty foods, the fried foods, the salt, all of that stuff, it affects the way your body survives, and it causes problems that will in turn cause you to have a stroke and other ailments as well. Now, some of the medical risk factors include high blood pressure, of course, high cholesterol, diabetes, circulation problems, and AFib. Now, high blood pressure is the number one cause of a stroke. When I tell people that I've had, a stroke, the first thing they ask me is, the statement they usually make, not even ask. they usually make the statement, oh, you have high blood pressure. And I'm like, no, I do not have high blood pressure. As a matter of fact, my blood pressure is pretty good. That's one of the things that I really don't worry about. My blood pressure has been good. So that is not a factor for me. Blood pressure is the force of blood, like the blood is pushing against the wall of your artery, right? And when it's pushing its way through, it causes the heart to pump harder than normal, right, to get to the body. And this weakens the blood vessels, and it can damage major organs, including the brain. People who have high blood pressure have 1.5 times the risk of having a stroke compared to those who have regular blood pressure of, say, like 125/75. The most important thing that you can do is to get control of your blood pressure. And that may mean eating healthy, getting physical, and for some people with medication. And they may seem trivial because you're not in that position now, but these things are important to your longevity. The next one is AFib. AFib is a kind of irregular heartbeat. You hear people say, oh, so-and-so have an irregular heartbeat. That's what they call AFib. You'll hear it sometimes on the commercial for some of these medication, AFib. It's a type of irregular heartbeat. And this can happen at any age, but it's most common in people over 65 or older. But because you're not above that doesn't exclude you from having AFib. And it's more common with people that do have high blood pressure, heart disease, or diabetes. And what AFib does, it causes the blood to pool in your heart. And when the blood pools, it just sits one place, it tends to form a clot, which then is carried to the brain, which then will cause a clot and will cause a stroke. So AFib is the other medical risk factor. Then we have cholesterol. Oh my goodness. Cholesterol is something that I kind of feel that we should all be in control of. It's such a dangerous thing to have high cholesterol. And for me, my cholesterol is good. It has come borderline at times in the past, but I am on one of the statin drug to not to control it, but as a preventative medicine, so that to lessen my risk of another stroke, because I've had multiple stroke. So that's why I'm on one of the statin drug, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. But cholesterol is the fatty stuff in your blood. It's fat in your blood. It's found in the foods that we eat. High cholesterol in your artery can block the normal flow of blood to the brain, and that causes a stroke. When you have high cholesterol, you have a higher risk of heart disease, and your body just doesn't feel good. High cholesterol is something that we should all keep in control and be mindful of. Just listening to my doctor speak, and from my experience with the medication and the effects of the medication, and with food and changing my diet and doing all of this stuff, cholesterol is it's a killer. High cholesterol is a killer. And you want your cholesterol to be under 200, the bad cholesterol, I should say, under 200, right? And you can help that by the things that you eat. Healthy eating habits, people, physical activities, and also medication can also help to keep it under control. The next one is diabetes. And everyone knows what diabetes is when the body either doesn't produce enough insulin, or the cells ignore the insulin. Without the insulin, the body can't produce sugar. And some people with diabetes, some people are borderline, some people have to take insulin. You don't want to get into this category of type 1 or type 2 diabetes. People with diabetes are four times more likely to have a stroke than people who don't. 4 times. That's pretty darn high. 4 times more likely to have a stroke than someone who does not have diabetes. And that's mainly because people with diabetes often have other stroke risk factors, like they have high blood pressure or AFib or high cholesterol. Once you're diabetic, most diabetics have another one of these, which compounds the problem and give you a higher risk of having a stroke. And of course, we all know weight loss, exercise, eating habit, again, medication, knowing what you eat, drinking is another thing that people think, oh, I can drink, No, you have to change your lifestyle in order to overcome and to keep these things under control. The next one is circulation. Circulation is the movement of the blood throughout the heart and the blood vessels, moving around and, having a grand old time. And we want the blood to be able to move around. And if the blood is not moving around freely, right, and it's hardening or it's building, there's a buildup in your arteries from plaque, from the cholesterol, for other things, then what's going to happen? It clogs up the artery and it blocks the flow of blood to the brain. And that causes an increase in your chance of having a stroke, a TIA, heart disease, any one of those things. And circulation can always be treated with medication. Sometimes some people may have to have surgery to fix their circulation problem. And I believe that would come under a vascular surgeon. I have a great vascular surgeon, Dr. Patel. And anyway, as for women, we face other unique risk factors because we are women. And, like for women, taking birth control, the greatest concern about taking contraceptive is that additional risk factors for your risk of having a stroke, right? Most women that also take birth control, some women smoke cigarettes, they have high blood pressure, maybe diabetes, and maybe there is age in there. And it also increases your chance of having a stroke. And birth control pills are also notorious for causing clots. Then another one for us women only is being pregnant. You would never think that being pregnant would increase your risk of having a stroke, but it does. Your risk of a stroke increase due to the changes in our body, such as the increase in blood pressure and the stress it places on our hearts. So during a pregnancy, your chance of having a stroke increases significantly because of those additional stress that our body is under carrying this baby, And also another one is if you're in menopause, you may decide that you're going to do hormone therapy to replace the estrogen and progestin that we lose during menopause. And during this time, your chances of a stroke also increases, right? And another one, the migraine. I spoke about the migraine before. Migraine also increases your chance of having a stroke. And this is just for women. When it comes to the different populations, African Americans are more impacted by stroke than any other racial group in America. African Americans are twice as likely to die from stroke than a white person. And I'm going to go over the risk factors for the different racial population, so that you can fully understand that, each community, each population have a different set of risk factors that we all have to be mindful of. Also, for African Americans, stroke tend to occur earlier in life. And African Americans are also more likely to become disabled from a stroke. And why do we say that? Because African Americans are less likely to call an ambulance to go to the hospital to get help right away. I'm hoping that trend is changing. I think it is. After speaking to my doctor a little bit, he thinks that it has shifted a little bit, but not enough that it has made a significant dent in the way African Americans have died or have become disabled from stroke. I mean, and to be honest, they're not totally sure why that is the case. Some have said, well, high blood pressure, the number one risk factor for stroke, and one in three African American suffer from high blood pressure. Ain't that amazing? One in three African American has high blood pressure, and that is the number one risk factor for a stroke. Diabetes also we have among African American. The sickle cell anemia, the most common genetic disorder among African Americans. And sickle cell, if you have the sickle cell trait or if you're a sickler, then you know what I'm talking about. And what does the sickle cell? It blocks the blood flow, right? Which can also result in you having a stroke. It blocks the blood vessels. Smoking, also another risk factor for stroke. And so that is higher among the African American population. Obesity, salt, fatty foods in the African American community, and we cannot deny that. In most African, and I'm really passionate about this, in most African American communities, there's Kennedy, what is it called? Not Kentucky, the other one, a Kennedy Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Burger King, pizzerias, a Checkers, a Popeyes, all the unhealthy crap that you can think of is populated, is overrun. They overrun the minority communities. In the Black communities, that's what you see most. You see Popeyes and McDonald's and a fast food joint on every corner. Do you see a health food store? No. Do you see, the juice bars? No. Now the juice bars are becoming popular. But do you see them getting the business that McDonald's or the fried chicken place or whatever they get? No, they don't. Because the Black community want the cheap and fast. They want the food, they want it cheap, and they want it fast. And that is our big problem. And yeah, you can lash at me later on, but I'm going to say it now. It's okay. I can take it. Say whatever you have to say. You can leave a comment after you listen. But the Black community, they want it cheap, they want it fast. They want to be able to run in the store and get it. Because guess what? We're not taking the time to cook the meals for our kids. We rather go to McDonald's and get the McDonald's or Burger King or Kennedy or Kentucky, whatever the hell that place name is. And so that we can we can watch TV, or we can get on our phone, we can get on social media and mind other people's business, but we're not minding our business at home with our children and our family, and seeing that our community is, the obesity in our community is at an epidemic proportion. If you look in the Black community, what do you see? What do you see? I want you to look in any Black community, and you look around the blocks and you look at the food places that's there, and you tell me that I am wrong. And maybe it's just, because I haven't gone to enough places, but I've traveled and I've seen it. Okay? And so obesity, the smoking, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, these are things that we can help to control, and we're not, because we have and we want more time to be on social media and to mind Miss Jones's business than to mind ourselves in our kitchen cooking some healthy food for our children and for ourselves. And to be honest with you, listen, I'm not a fast food person. I was never that person, but now and again, yeah, I want a Big Mac. I get a Big Mac attack, you know, and I will go and I'll get it, and I'm telling you, I'll eat that Big Mac and it's good going down, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so good. But at the end of the day, when I'm finished with that Big Mac, I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? Honestly, what did I just do to myself, to my body? And because I have other complications, my stomach is really bad. So I don't eat out a lot. I don't really eat out a lot. The fast food is not for me, the greasy food, all of that stuff. If I eat out and I eat all this greasy food, I am done. You know, and that's changed the way I eat, not just now, but it's been a long time. These are some of the things that we can do as a community to help ourselves and to help the next generation. All right. So now we're on to the Hispanic community. And Hispanics are more likely to suffer a stroke at a younger age. The average age for a Hispanic to get a stroke is 67 compared to 80 for everyone else. And stroke and heart disease counts for 1 in 4 deaths among Hispanic men and 1 in 3 among Hispanic women. That is not good. And also, again, the high blood pressure, the high rate of obesity. 75% of Hispanic American men and 72% of Hispanic American women are overweight or obese. And we don't have a problem with that. We should all have a problem with that. Whether you're Hispanic, black, white, Indian, it doesn't matter. We should all have a problem with all of this. And so the Hispanic population, they also have an increased chance of a stroke because of these risk factors. And also one of the biggest, I would say, risk factors is the language barrier. And in the Hispanic community, if your English is not good, you may not be able to communicate what you're really trying to say. And I personally think that every hospital, every doctor should speak Spanish or know the basics of Spanish. And we're living in a world that we should all be we should all speak multiple languages. And Spanish is number 1 at the top of the list. And there is always a delay in care, so that increases their chance of dying. The Hispanic community and also the African American community, once they start feeling better, they tend to stop their treatment. And they don't like going to the doctors. African American, the Caribbean population, don't like going to the doctor. They avoid it at all costs. And because of that, risk of dying or being disabled from a stroke has increased tremendously. Those are the 2 major populations that I would say that has a higher risk. But American Indians are not left out. American Indians and Alaskan Natives are 2.5 times more likely to have a stroke than their white counterparts, because heart disease is the first and leading cause of death in this population. Stroke is the 6th leading cause of death among this population. But death from heart disease in this population, American Indians and Alaskan Natives, occur at a younger age. I mean, most of this population, they said 36% of those who die of a stroke tend to die before their before the age of 65. And again, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and smoking in this population are the main risk factors. And then to my Asian Americans, they are lucky. They're the lucky group. They're actually less likely to die from a stroke because they tend to have a low rate of obesity and a low rate of high blood pressure. So they are blessed. So my Asian Americans, we want some of what you're having. And also, let's talk about young adults. Young adults are at an increasing, there are an increased number of young adults that are now experiencing strokes. They are, stroke in our young adults are on the rise, and that's something that should concern us. And this is because of the stress that we're putting this population under right now. Most young adults, they can't find a job. They go to school for how long? They have student loans coming out the wazoo. They can't pay their bills. They're living at home. They can't find the right job, so they're working minimal. And that stress on the body will cause things to happen. And then what happens? They become disabled and not being able to work, and then become dependent on their older parents. So this is something that we have to address going forward. This is not a joke. And they said there was a 44% increase in the number of young Americans hospitalized due to stroke over the last decade. 44% increase. So we have to change something for this younger generation, for them to be healthier. And we can start with ourselves. We start now, and making changes, and not only in lifestyle, but the pressure that we put on them can go a long way. Now, I know many people don't think about babies and children having stroke, but they do. And because they're so young and, not able to convey what they're feeling, it tend to go unrecognized and not treated properly. But we have the same warning signs. Remember FAST? The same symptoms in newborns and children. But in newborns and children, they also can suffer from seizures, extreme sleepiness or tiredness. And they tend to, especially babies, the younger ones and toddlers, they tend to use one side of their body more than the others. So you have to look for that. Now, in children and teens, you need to look out for headaches, vomiting, sleeping a lot, dizzy, being severely dizzy, and a loss of balance. People, there are some of the things that I've gone over that we can control. We can control some of these risk factors. We don't have to be a statistic. We don't have to become the statistic. We don't. We certainly don't. Speaking as someone that has experienced major stroke, TIA, I've experienced it all. I can tell you that there are things that you have to change in your life to prevent another occurrence. I get stroke not because of high cholesterol and high blood pressure, and because I'm diabetic or smoke. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't have high blood pressure, I'm not diabetic, I don't have any of those risk factors, but I have some sort of clotting disorder that causes my body to experience clots. I have thoracic outlet syndrome. And, I've suffered clots because of that. So for my body, I have all these different complications that may not apply here, but I have still experienced those things and experienced the symptoms that are here. So I can tell you firsthand that what it feels like, what the treatment is like, what medication they may use, how they treat you at the hospital, what to look for, what to do and what not to do. And that's why I'm doing this segment here, because I just feel like it's really important. And with, Luke Perry passing away, oh my gosh, I loved him on 90210. And as a matter of fact, I've always loved him. He was like my teenage crush, one of my teenage crush. But it has opened the floodgates and has started us having another conversation, because we've had these conversations before, but it has caused us to have another conversation about our health and how we can make changes that can help us to live a little bit longer. I believe that when it's your time to go, that, there's nothing you can do to prevent it. When God calls you home, no one can stop it. But there are things that you can do in your life that will cause you to live a healthier life. And some of you may say, well, Kay, I go to the gym, I eat healthy at this, or I know a friend that did all the right things and he still died of a heart attack, or he died this or whatever. But we're not talking about someone else. We're talking about you. You know your body. Don't use someone else's experience to judge yours. I can only tell you about my experience, but you're the one that have to implement these things in your life. You have to get to know your body. You have to talk to your doctor. You have to take your medication. You have to make those changes, and you will see results. I promise you. Someone saw me the other day and said, Kay, it's great to see you. Your features have changed so much. And yeah, my features has changed because of those having a stroke. I've had to go on many different medication. I'm on a blood thinner. And if you've had a stroke, a clot or a stroke, any kind of blockage, they may put you on a blood thinner. I was on Coumadin, I was on Plavix, I was on Xarelto, I'm on Eliquis now, I was on something else. I've been through about 6 different blood thinners before, and right now the Eliquis I've been on for less than a year, I believe. So we'll see how that one works. For me, I've had clots even while on blood thinners. So my situation is a little bit different than the average stroke survivor. And so I know it was a lot of information I just gave you, but I'm hoping that this will help you in the future. And, I'm always an open book in sharing my experience, because I believe that it's through sharing our experiences, we can help each other. I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. And I believe in sharing that information with you. And if you guys should have any question at all, you can leave a comment. You can leave me an email. I will always get back to you. You can reach me at thechatwithkstar@gmail.com, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I have some amazing doctors, and I must say I'm alive today because of God, first and foremost. And I've made changes in my life, and I have an amazing team of doctors at Montefiore Hospital that has make it their job and their mission to help keep me alive for as long as possible. So again, thank you for joining me for this edition of The Chat, and tune in next time when we will, chit chat about something else, and I'm hoping that it will be something that will be important to your life, your family, or your community. Thanks again.